I see some of you guys starting to join us. Thank you for being with us. We're going to wait just a couple minutes to kick things off and give some other people some time to join in. So just stay tuned for another minute or two, and then we'll get going. All right, so we're going to get going here now. Really appreciate everybody joining us here this afternoon in Singapore, this evening in Los Angeles. It's really awesome to see the turnout and the kind of global attention we're receiving with this program. It's truly awesome what's happening here with all the different pieces of the industry coming together. So I just want to give a kind of couple opening remarks to set the scene and a little bit of logistical notes here. So today will be kind of our final Ask Me Anything webinar. So it's a great opportunity to have questions answered from our panelists here from AirLab, as well as a panel of Starburst team members as well. I'm Asher. I'm our global technology scouting manager. So it's my job to help us scout the globe for the hottest startups working in aerospace and defense, but also on enabling technologies that have some applications within the industry. And so what we've seen so far, especially with this Singapore program, and not just in the applicant pool, but also in the targeted scouting we've done globally, is that there really is an opportunity to kind of rewrite the script here coming out of the COVID pandemic as we move forward into 2021. And there's applications across technologies that haven't been used in the commercial aviation sector before that we're seeing transfer in. And a great example of that is anomaly detection software that otherwise would have been used for something quite mundane now is going to be used for biometrics and detection of airport check-in and making sure that everybody is safe. So really interesting, the different use cases we're seeing come together, especially with this program. And we're really happy to be at the forefront, especially with all of our corporate partners supporting us. So in just a minute, I'll kick off to Julius, who's our director in Asia and the lead on this accelerator. But before we do that, just want to remind everybody that if you have questions for our panelists, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You'll see on Zoom, and you can ask questions right away, get them answered live in real time. We'll be recording this session as well. It'll be posted to the Accelerator website, Singapore Aviation Accelerator, and you can watch it at any point you wish. And so without further ado, Julius, would love to ask you to show yourself, unmute yourself, and welcome us all here.
Thanks, Asher.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone in the channel. So for those that who know me, I'm Julius. So the director for our Starburst Singapore team. So working on the aviation program. So I think we have a good turnout here. For the past few months, my team and myself, so we have been doing a lot of dedicated scoutings for the airline problem statements worldwide. So I think we will have an enriching discussion this afternoon. So before I go into discussing about the problem details, I like to lay out about the agenda. So the agenda would be, I'll do an introduction about who AirLab is. I will also speak a little bit about the profile of the speakers, ideally Chris Lee, as well as Mr. Quack from CAS. The flow of the agenda would be, we are going through problem by problem. So the Chris will be elaborating about the problem statements in detail. And then thereafter, we will ask questions to the floor, to the panelists. So we will problem by problems. Then thereafter, once we finish problem 1 to 3, so thereafter we will go into to the program side. So those attendees that have questions regarding the Singapore Aviation program, so also can be can answer any questions that you have. Okay. So without further ado, I like to introduce AirLab, our corporate partners. So an introduction of AirLab. So they are essentially a Center of Excellence lab set up between the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore as well as Thales. So I think the initiative is really to actually focus on the development of an open air traffic management system architecture. So I think the mandate of the scouting exercise is really to look for the best quality startups to work and to actually value add in this open ATM system. So without further ado, I will also want to actually introduce speaker number 1, which is Chris Lee, give a little bit about his bio. So Chris is the Deputy Director for AirLab at Thales. So he's one of the founding members of AirLab and leads the strategic and ecosystem partnership between AirLab with both the local partners as well as the stakeholders. So in his most recent role, prior to Thales, he was the partnership director in a local blockchain startup. Chris actually brings with him extensive experience from working in different domains of the public sector, where he led various initiatives from industry development to defense, aviation, and infocom. He was part of the team that implemented this project, which is about 200 million Sing dollars transformation of the Singapore air traffic management ecosystem through the Center of Excellence for Air Traffic Management. Chris has also collaborated with various stakeholders to actually set up the Air Traffic Management Research Institute and other partnerships. Speaker number 2. We have Mr. Quek joining us from CAS. So Mr. Quek is the Chief Air Traffic Controller Specialist responsible for system development. So he's air traffic control from CAS, and he's a chief. He has more than 37 years of experience in both the air traffic operations as well as the air traffic system planning and development. So he's actually very active in the various ICAO forums and panels. He's actually here to provide very valuable technical inputs and to actually make sure that we have the best tech for this initiative. Okay, so without further ado, I like to actually bring Chris and Mr. Quek online with us to actually talk about problem statement number 1. Chris, please unmute your mic.
Yep, thanks, Julius. Hi, everyone, regardless of your time zone, morning, afternoon, and evening. So before I start on the use cases, maybe I give you the part of the mandate that we are doing in AirLab. Essentially, it leads to why we are participating on this accelerator program by Starburst in Singapore. So essentially in AirLab, what we're trying to do is to explore open ATM architecture, air traffic management, not auto teller machine. So with that, actually, we welcome partners to plug in your capabilities on top of our ATM, open ATM system to try it out in AirLab, which is essentially where we try out all these different type of capabilities, especially in deep tech or AI and things like that. And with that, we are going to function for 3 years. There's a co-funding of 30 million between Thales and CAS to see us out these 3 years. So hopefully within these 3 years, we are able to get enough partners and startups to prove the case that regardless of what startup you are in terms of capabilities, you are able to plug and provide capabilities or even a service to enrich the ecosystem in Singapore in providing such services. Do you want me to start the use case, or do you want Craig to also share a bit? I don't know what opinion he has.
Chris, maybe we can get Craig to actually share some of his opinion regarding the problem statements.
Yeah, right.
Then perhaps we can then jump in on the questions.
Yeah, I'll start elaborating after that. Yeah. Craig, do you have anything?
Hi, good day, everyone. I'm Craig. It's interesting to go on this journey because typically ATM systems are big, huge monsters, and innovative guys don't have a chance to get a bite of the pie. But with this new open ATM system, it's possible through API to be able to plug in specific functions that maybe the smaller players would be able to provide more innovative solutions to solve some ATC problem statements that Chris will talk on later on, and that's where you guys come in. Okay, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. So the first use case, we are talking about this tool called the controller tool to facilitate what we call continuous descent operation, or CDO in short. So this operation essentially allows the engine to idle at the final approach, meaning descent into Changi Airport. So it kind of saves fuel and allows a greener aviation initiative in the future if more flights could take on such a profile for descent. So currently what we have for ATCO, or we call air traffic controllers, is that they were based on what is appearing on their air situation display or monitor that shows the aircraft that's within the terminal area in Singapore, and make a judgment to see whether this aircraft should be given that profile for descent based on conflict and various other factors. So and I was thinking, why don't we provide a tool to make this more structured, to inform the pilots and the controllers that, well, you're actually primed for such a profile for them to descend into Singapore. So with that, perhaps we are thinking about capabilities out there who can help us based on the information that's provided from our open ATM platform through the APIs to deliver the data, to understand and to provide such alerts to air traffic controllers on their air situation display. Then from there, they can take on instruction to give on to the pilots for such a consideration to take on CDO, right? So some we did kind of brainstorm and thought about what type of steps should the startup or should any partners bring on board in terms of capabilities, because it's something that you have to play with us in terms of understanding our open APIs and ATM. So the first step could be very, very simple in terms of calculating fuel efficiency. From the flight data that we pump out, you can do some calculation on what's the flight fuel efficiency, or even based on what we have on the map, detect some conflicts and maybe provide the aircraft with the least conflict and deliver such information to the air traffic controllers. So this is the tool that we are thinking about. And of course, end of the day, it's good to calculate the fuel saving and the CO2 emission that's reduced.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Chris. So to actually give the background of this problem statement number 1, is there any questions coming from the floor? If have, please put up, I think, a Q&A, raise up your hands. Okay. If not, I think we do have one question. So coming from a Canadian startup from Flight Plan. So he has actually provided his questions to us during his registration. So Chris, I think his question is there a role for the required time of arrival functionality in the flight management computer and system factor into the desired solution? Question number 1. Question number 2. So is the controller pilot data link communications, in our term is CPDLC, so a possible usable media? Question number 3, and any further insights into development costs for the decision support tool?
Maybe I'll take on question 3. Craig, do you want to take on 1 and 2? It's more ops. So
I will take on 1 and 2. Okay.
Thank you.
So before we take on the questions, maybe I elaborate a little bit further on the use case. So as Chris mentioned, CDO procedures allows an aircraft from the start of descent to landing to switch the engine to idle. And if it's done properly, you could actually, in a way, close to gliding all the way down to landing without interruption, and therefore you'll be able to save X amount of fuel. But in reality, in busy airports, it is very, very difficult to come to such a situation. So this use case would then require some rules for the guy doing the software to help the controller make the decision to allow the commencement of CDO to have uninterrupted descent. So you must be able to take in certain information and consider within certain rules whether there's an opportunity or high percentage of success rate to commence the CDO, amongst other things. And as Chris pointed out, the second point, to be able to compute the savings from fuel. Okay, so this is a more what you say, a more generic laymanized understanding of CDO. Could you repeat the questions again? So I answer them one at a time.
No problem, Craig.
Three.
So question number one from Flight Plan, a Canadian startup, is question number one is there a role for the required time of arrival functionality in the flight management computer system? Factor into the desired solution.
Currently, no, but based on the procedures, commencement of CDO should not affect the arrival time at all. Yeah. Okay. So you could retain your current processes or requirement in each individual FR if you still have the required time of arrival as yet. Yeah. Okay.
Understood. And second question number two. So still for you. So is actually CPDLC a possible usable media?
CPDLC is a possible media, but normally CPDLC is used in oceanic or area control, and usually perhaps at the start of the commencement of top of descent point. But up to a certain point, as you pass through certain altitude within the approach funnel, and it is not viable to continue to use CPDLC because of certain reasons like performance, and there could be a risk of not immediate delivery of the message. So in this case, once you're into the approach sector, you should be using VHF voice instead of CPDLC. Yeah.
Thank you, Craig. So for the benefit of all the attendees, so CPDLC is a very technical term. It actually stands for Controller Pilot Data Link Communications. Okay.
Sorry, so maybe I should elaborate more. CPDLC is actually a text-based fixed message set sent through the FMS to communicate, but normally it's used in low intensity area like in area control oceanic, where there is no necessity for immediate response. So if you're commencing a descent, you're probably in the approach area, every second counts. So you should be on VHF.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig, for the comprehensive explanation. So I reserve question three, in fact, for Chris. Chris, so I think the question again from Flight Plan is there any further insights into the development cost for the decision support tool?
Yeah, so at this point, the plan is to use the leverage Starburst program to develop a certain POC that we can see some outcome from it. Of course, it doesn't preclude that if it's the outcome is viable, we will go on to work further with these startups. But at this point in time, is very frankly just plug onto our open ATM and we test the viability. It has to be comfortable for both parties to move along to further commitment in the future.
Yep. So it's a plug and play, but with a possibility, but it depends on the functionality, right?
Correct.
Okay. So with that, throwing out to all the attendees, is there any more questions for Chris and Craig with regards to statement number one? Okay. 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 So there's no further questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hands using the buttons and can type your questions, and then we have the panelists to actually answer your questions. If not, Chris, I think shall we move on to problem statement number two?
Yep. Okay. So use case two, thanks Julius. Use case two essentially creates a better situation awareness between the pilot and the air traffic controllers. So just again, in today's context, when a instruction is passed by the controllers to the pilot, for instance, to climb or to descend or to change direction, the pilot will read back that instruction to the controllers and to ensure that is correctly understood or acknowledged. So a lot of times they could be, but I don't mean to say that there's usually there is that some misunderstanding or misinformation or miscommunication, I would say, in that perspective. So if let's say there's a tool today that converts speech to text and at the same time flag out any conflict between the speech from the air traffic controllers with the pilots read back, and then inform the controllers that there's certain potential miscommunication that you need to clarify to ensure safety in the execution. So that would be great. We're thinking about these two using a lot on speech recognition to enable its capabilities. Because today in the market you have the Google and lots of speech engine out there. So if you can leverage the speech engines libraries and all these things to enrich that kind of accuracy in terms of speech to text, I think they will enhance that capabilities a lot. It's something that we really need not reinvent the wheel as Thales, because the capability is already out there, quite mature in that sense. So that's why we're reaching out to see whether startups can provide such a capability in this use case. Quack, do you want to add on to this use case?
Yes, by digitizing the voice into text, right, regardless whether it's from controller or pilots, it gives us the opportunity to use this information to check against erroneous readback that could have been missed by the controllers. So otherwise, then it could lead to incidents or descent through because of the error. Okay, the other use case for this, it could be used to check on the intent command, because controllers typically will input the levels that they have given to the pilots into the ATM system. So by counter checking his speech, his text, converting his speech into text, we could use that as a double check against the voice and the brain that don't match. So for example, you have said climb to flight level 350 and you have key inside the ATM system flight level 330. So the speech engine will then detect that you have key in flight level 330, but you have manually input it into the ATM system as 350. Then it will be able to flag in these errors. So these are just two of the examples, one of them which Chris mentioned, and the other one to flag against this. There could be other avenues, other use case because of this conversion to digitize the text in text. There could be many other opportunities that we could have not thought of that you're able to help us catch errors. So it would be very useful, yeah, in that respect. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Quack, and thanks, Chris, for giving this comprehensive background on POM statement number 2. In fact, again, during the registration, we have questions, I think, coming from attendees who have actually is with us today. I think we will go on with these questions coming from Mike, who is with us today from Deep Graham. So in fact, he has 4 questions for Chris and Quack. Okay, so the first question for POM statement number 2, the use case is, is a startup be able to actually get audio specific, fast, or even pilot airline jargon that we need to incorporate? Question number 1.
Quack, do you want to take this?
Okay. Yeah, I will take this. So for controllers and pilots, we work within certain rules. There are ATC physiologies that controllers and pilots all over the world adhere to. So you could obtain this document. This is an ICAO document, recommendations for radio telephony, and then it will help you understand the type of jargon, as you put it, that is used. And typically we will stick to the standard language used for all these requests and clearances as far as possible. And you should also use this to train your engine to recognize string of text with the intent. Yeah, it's not just a simple conversion of direct conversion to text, but also be able to recognize a string of text, although sometimes the pilot may transpose the order of the text. So it will help you in accuracy in that respect. Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. So we got more questions coming up. So in fact, question number 2 is, what are the expectations around the transcription error rates?
Okay, so we are dealing with, I would say, accuracy here.
Yes.
So
Error variance.
yeah, we don't want to prefix accuracy that the industry has more capabilities in developing. So if you have the short answer is as accurate as possible, and if you really want to put a number to it, we hope that it will be more than 95% accuracy.
Understand.
In that order.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Then I think we have question number 3 also coming from the same startup. So regarding the latency question. So how quickly is a startup, the technology is able to transcript in real time? What is the requirement?
So, I mean, this one also have to do with whether it's 1 pass-through or 2 pass-through and things like that. We're talking about in terms of transcription, because ATC is safety critical and it needs the information to be quickly transcribed. So we're talking about 3 milliseconds in this question.
3 milliseconds. Okay. Thanks, Chris. And question number 4 again. So does the startup need any outside materials, say charts, manuals, etc., to really understand what's being said?
Craig. I'll defer this to Craig.
Yep.
Okay, if you need the charts and all that, is well, maybe understanding of the local environment, but actually to me is not necessary. Perhaps maybe in understanding or knowing the reporting points for you to transcribe, like clear to SAMCO or whatever. No, that's about it. But generally, for it to be applicable, not just to us, maybe for other ANSPs as well. So generally, should be the radio telephony is that portion that you need to take care of, and then maybe the airway fixed and common reporting points. That's for the local requirements.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. So we have another questions for problem statement number 2 coming from another startup. So in fact, from Laurie, who is joining us today from Vocopia Research. So her question would be, how would data be collected, annotated, and shared?
Okay, so this one I mentioned earlier on in the first use case. So we have this open ATM platform that provides APIs for plug and play to capabilities. So the data will be passed through that kind of fashion through our APIs. And basically that's about it. If there's any specific question in terms of whether data can be stored, I think I do think that's possible today. Yeah.
Yep. Sure. We can take this offline for a more detailed discussion. Okay. So again, I think we have all the answers to those questions. Any other questions from the attendees? Okay, so we have 2 questions coming from Adam, who, so first is, what languages do you need for this particular use case? Is it English only or some other as well? Chris and Quack.
Yeah, it's English. In Singapore, we only use English. But if you want to prepare your solution for other places, you know, ICAO has a number of official languages, including Chinese, Russian, Spanish. So for this specific use case in Singapore, we only use English. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Greg, still hang on the line because I think there are also the part 2 of the questions. So from Adam as well. So would searching for specific predefined keywords be useful for this use case?
Definitely, because then in the context of things, then you'll be able to even use machine learning to help you fill in the blanks if some of the words are not quite clear due to whatever reason. So the phraseology is quite standard in ATC for both pilots and controllers. So if after a while, even he missed a 2 you know that there should have been a tool in that the physiology. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for giving this good explanation, Greg. Any other questions from the attendees? So we have the right panelists with us to answer all your questions. Okay, maybe without any more questions, I will actually move on to problem statement number 3. Chris, would you be able to elaborate a little bit more about problem statement number 3?
Thanks, Julius. Before I move on to use case 3,
Yep.
also want to share a bit on what is to be expected, right? I mean, not to worry that because these are good questions that's coming in that you're asking basically ATM domain related questions. And Quack with us is very experienced air traffic controllers, and he sits on the board and chairs quite a number of ICAO task force and subgroups. So not to worry about domain, because we are definitely here to mentor on that part. What is more relevant is your technical capabilities that you're thinking of in offering to solve this use case, and what's interesting in your proposal. So if you have anything that is really interesting to put in through a proposal through the program, right?
Yeah.
So without further ado, let me go into use case 3, right?
Yep.
Use case 3 is also related to green aviation and is pertaining to whether predictability or I would say provide better advisory for weather. So in today's context, basically weather is provided in certain intervals that potentially might not be that defined and refined in a sense to help controllers and pilots. So today, if you understand how pilots calculate their fuel is using the FMS, they input the information and the weather condition, then they will calculate certain fuel consumption for them to carry, the fuel for them to carry from one journey to the other, one point to the other point. So, right, if let's say today the weather information provided to them is much more accurate in that sense of with better resolution, they give them some confidence for them to carry maybe a potentially lesser fuel to make that journey. In a way, it's safe fuel because you know, you carry more fuel where you take off is also burning additional weight in that perspective. So from here, actually, we don't have too much of a requirement, but rather we want to see what's out there in terms of weather predictability in potentially even using big data. But what's important is that the data source that you pump in and you put out needs to be a trusted source and robust enough to provide certain trusted capabilities to the end user to do their calculation and all these things. So in short, it's basically to improve weather prediction. Of course, you potentially have to work with the National Environment Agency, the Met Office, and all these things to get more data. Craig, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, currently there's a gap in the gap, not in the sense that there's not enough information for ATC, but for the purpose of flight planning, for example, you will only be able to flight plan on theft information or weather forecast of the day. And sometimes it's not the real forecast, but it could be yesterday's forecast for tomorrow's afternoon. And then you need something more accurate in order to plan your reserve fuel that you carry. So if this weather information is up to date and constantly being updated, then for flight planning purposes, for carriage of diversion, fuel for diversion to alternate aerodrome, it would help the airline save fuel if you are able to have more predictability on the weather en route and also at the destination. Yeah. Instead of today, you just carry perhaps your standard and based on the general predicted weather, and perhaps through this innovation, be able to have a more precise forecast of the weather and therefore be able to recalibrate more accurately the fuel that you need to carry for the trip.
Thank you, Quek. Thank you for this comprehensive explanation. So I think this is a very, very beneficial problem statement that's helping both the ANSP as well as the airline to save fuel and for enhanced safety aspect. So I'm trolling out to the floor. Is there any questions coming in with regards to the big weather data? Okay. So we have one question coming from Martin. Okay. From one of the attendees, Martin. So how do you expect certain requirements certification from the weather service provider, such as the ISO 9001 and more?
Actually, for this question, Craig, if you have any answer to this?
Yeah, actually, I think the Met Office will not certify you because it's a profession by itself to be able to predict accurately the weather. But the way it's done is for specific intervals. For example, every half hourly, I provide you a meta. Every X period of hours, I provide you a TEF. Then what's in between? So unless you have a specie and all that, but what this use case is for you to be able to fill the gap between the meta and the TEF and let the airline to have more accurate prediction of the weather at specific locations and aerodromes so that they could then plan the appropriate carriage of the sufficient fuel to meet the diversion requirements. Yeah. So
Thank
in
you.
short, there's no ISO thingy from the Met Office. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Martin, is there any other questions? I know you're very enthusiastic and motivated about this particular problem statements. How about other attendees? Is there any other questions? Have, huh? Okay. Okay. So okay. We got more an extension of Martin questions. So the question is, usually the national MAC services claim that they have to be aviation meteorology certified. So how would they actually expect a future business relationship?
Yeah. So
Great.
So in this case, is perhaps not really to be able to forecast, but to be able to put together a series of forecasts from various aerodromes or en route centers along the way, and then package them together such that the airline is able then use this package to predict the weather for a particular trip from start of the journey to the end of the trip, so as to carry the sufficient fuel for the diversion. So today, yes, each and every airport will give you a forecast, half an hourly. But what about 4 hours later? How do I get it? So you have to find a way to get it either through the Met or through some big data or some ways of collating other information to come up with the forecast weather in a way. But you are not replacing the Met forecaster.
The Met forecaster.
Yes.
maybe to add on to Quack's reply as well, in terms of business relationship, we are actually not in this program. We don't intend to define that kind of relationship, but rather you are actually half right that to get this to work, you will have to get their Met Office partake in the solutioning, at least to convince them that whatever that is proposed is robust enough to be used for certain applications. So that potentially will have to be a bridging between you and the Met Office.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Quack. Any other questions on use case number 3? Q&A, yeah. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'd like to thank Chris I'd like to thank Quack for actually answering this very technically questions for all the 3 use cases. And I think we have a interest coming from a lot of startup worldwide with regards to addressing your problem statements. Okay, so with that, I'll move on to the second half of this Ask Me Anything session with regards to actually question on the program itself. So of course, you have myself to actually answer this question, and maybe my corporate, which is Chris, together with us to actually answer any questions that you have. Okay, so is there any questions regarding the problems that that you like to find out? Okay, we've not, what I would share with all the attendees is, so currently right now at this point, so we are scouting worldwide for the best quality startups. Our applications were actually closed on the 30th of this month. Okay, so the application process, we require that each and every interested startup to actually provide your solution as well as your pitch deck, and then submit through our website is aviation-accelerator.com. And we like also to actually talk a little bit more about what is your solution particularly. Okay, so again, I think this is a very highly technical, highly niche areas, but it's certainly a growth areas, particularly for those startups that are not in this arena. Okay. And of course, I think for the month of November, it will be the month that we will be doing comprehensive evaluations and selection with our corporate partners and mentors representative as part of a robust selection committee to down select to the final 10 that we are bringing on board to our accelerator program starting next January with the demo day standard in the first week of March 2021. Okay.
Julius, there's a question by Laurie.
Laurie, hang on. Okay. Okay, Quack. Okay. The question by Laurie is the program only open to startups or can established small companies also be involved? Okay, so the Laurie, so currently, ideally, we are looking for startups within the pre-seed up to Series A1. On the technical and the solutioning is, so ideally we are looking for a solution. Minimum has to have an MVP, or if not, it has to have a proof of concept with customers. Okay, so if your company or corporate, they fulfill these 2 requirements, so we are able to consider, you are able to actually apply to our program. But the principle of this program is really we are trying to attract the best startup to actually work in this. Okay. Okay, so since we have, I would like to also mention, since we mentioned the details on the program. So the program would also be comprising is a 13-week program that we will be doing a structured handholding, both on the technical side as well as the business side. And on the business side, we have actually put together a team of business mentors and also comprising of a VC mentors and also the legal mentors. So the intent is really to actually bring good quality startup into Singapore. And eventually for those startups that are selected to have some form of Singapore linkages. So either to have their headquarters or your headquarters to be based in Singapore or your regional headquarters in Singapore as well. So if you consider doing business in the Far East. Okay. We are 15 minutes more to go. Is there any more questions? If not, I'd like to actually invite everyone, the panelists, my team, onto the to show yourself, and we wait for a minute for any for the final questions. Okay. Everybody, please unmute, show your screen. So I'd like to share with you my team and everyone together with us. Okay. Okay. Without any further questions, I think we will end this session, the very last of our Ask Me Anything for the Singapore Aviation Program. But we are not stopping here. Is there any other questions? You can reach out to Julius or Jonathan, write to me or email to me, or you can find us in LinkedIn. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Julius.
Thank you. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.